So I think what's important for the National Victim Support Framework is to understand the context and the background. And we have to start with the fact that 75 million victims, or 75 million people, fall victim to crime every year, and not just any crime, serious crimes. That's across the whole of the European Union. Probably you can see that across at least Western states. So 15% of our population every single year fall victim to serious crime. Not only are they falling victim to crime, but large numbers of them will never report that crime. They'll never reach the justice system, and they may never even tell anybody. So you have people who are highly traumatized, suffering all sorts of impacts, whether that be emotional and psychological issues which result in substance abuse, which may result in the breakdown of families, which may result in lifelong traumas that people never get over, which may result in the fact that they may not be able to be successful in school, in their studies, in work. And we have 15 million people every year suffering these serious crimes. And what we aren't really understanding is that we have entire societal impacts of this crime. And we're not taking a societal, comprehensive approach to the solutions and to the responses to the crime. And what we're seeing is that the way we're working, the way we're designing our responses from a victim's perspective is ad hoc, it's short-term, and it's poorly coordinated, often based on a siloed approach, which is either because one ministry or another ministry is responsible, or because we're focused on one type of crime or another type of crime, and yet we're not thinking about how all of these different issues are interrelated, and that the solutions we need to develop have to be developed also in a coordinated manner. So that's the origins and the context within which we've been developing the National Victim Support Framework. What we're seeing at the national level is that we have rights, but these rights aren't being fully and properly implemented. There is funding that's available, but it's generating competition and friction between organisations who fundamentally all have the same objective. We have organisations trying to help victims who aren't talking to each other, who are prevented from working with each other because of data protection rules or lack of data sharing protocols. So there are multiple different ways in which advances are being made, but in different ways at different times and in different locations. And there is incoherence in the system. And what we're fundamentally failing to understand, that support is an essential service. It is a bridge between health and justice. And we have to think of support in this fundamentally different way. We have to have a fundamental shift in the way that we work on victim support issues, instead of it being a niche subject which is dealt with when the latest terrible crime has happened in a country, and we think we need to act on it now, and then 2 weeks later it's forgotten and we go back to normal. We need to have a strategic, long-term approach to this, which is agreed at the national level, which is coordinated across all the multiple actors that work in the field, and where there is the legislative framework for this work, but there's also the funding in place, that there's the cooperation mechanisms in place that allow for multi-agency working, so that we can identify who are the victims, we can bring them to the services that they need, we can help them come forward and be aware of the services that exist, but also so that we can work together in a much more coherent manner. This is fundamentally what we're trying to achieve with the National Victim Support Framework. It's a huge shift in our approach. At the highest level, it means that we have a minister who is responsible for victims' issues. It means that in every EU country there is a national victim strategy. It's very common to see security strategies, crisis infrastructure strategies, environmental strategies. There is almost no member state which has a victims strategy, and it doesn't make sense when we have human trafficking strategies, children's strategies, gender-based violence strategies, and yet there isn't a strategy for the entire class of victims and victims policy. And that victim strategy has to be underpinned by a coordination mechanism and also by oversight mechanisms. One of our fundamental problems in this field is simply that victims' rights are not implemented, and they're not implemented because there aren't the oversight mechanisms to assess whether they're implemented, and there are no or few consequences to the failure to implement. There are not the legal remedies in place. So these issues are all integrated. We have to have the oversight mechanisms, independent bodies that can review this, the coordination committees that bring all of these actors together so they're able to cooperate and they're also required to cooperate. And then at the detailed level, we're working both with victims and their social support network, but also with all the multiple agencies that have a role in helping victims. And this is what a national victim support framework is. We are bringing all the different parts of society together in an organised manner so that no victim is forgotten, so that every victim's needs, individual needs and group needs, are met in a coherent system which is efficient and effective. And by doing that, by the way, the costs of any of this work are far outweighed by all of the benefits. That's a financial benefit to the economy, that's a social benefit to the cohesion of our societies, and it's a personal benefit to every single victim who is able to recover and become a successful and fulfilled member of society. So there are no downsides to organising our support systems in this coordinated framework.